I want to take bets over under on how soon Andrea will get emotional and maybe start tearing up because today, our interview, our fireside chat is with my friend, my role model, my mentor. Oh, look, already starting. Whoever bet 10 seconds, you win the pot. Sarah Jones. She is one of my favorite people on this earth, and it has been my extreme joy to get to work so closely with her, to learn from her, and most recently, to take the reins from her as CEO of PMD Alliance. So my name's Andrea Merriam. I'm the current CEO of PMD Alliance, and I'm here with our founding CEO, Miss Sarah Jones. So thank you, Sarah, so much for being online today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I was telling Andrea, I think it's been a year and a half since I have done any kind of a live stream, because long before I retired, I knew I couldn't do these. So I stopped doing them, at least a year before I retired.
And that might be a good place for us to start. I will set the tone that we want this to be a casual, comfortable conversations. I see some of you with your kitties and puppies there. We want to hear from you, so please, the chat line is open. Send in your comments, and we will take some time. We do have the capability to unmute and maybe do some questions live if anyone wants to be on camera and ask a question or say hi. But yes, Sarah, so the last time maybe some people here saw you in the little yellow box of Zoom, you were hosting an online program. You were the CEO of a nonprofit, and you had grown PMD Alliance from a startup to a multi-million-dollar company with dozens of employees, or tens of employees. I forget the count. And now everyone got an email about Sarah's going to be on to talk about how to be sick. So I've been, following along the way, but for some of our community who maybe had a little bit of whiplash and wait, what happened? Could we go in the rewind way back machine and kind of talk a little bit about your journey and your diagnosis journey?
Sure. It is just wonderful to be with you all. And Andrea, I'm so glad that we're doing this as a chat, because you and I can chat for hours and time flies. So, and it's funny, I was telling her I'm so nervous, which, boy, we used to do hundreds of these, it's kind of different when it's personal, or I don't know, it was always personal for me at PMD Alliance, but yeah, I started getting sick right around when COVID hit, like literally, in March of 2020, and didn't know what it was, and spent that first year trying to get a doctor that would listen to me, frankly, and look at the symptoms and not minimize them. And my disease is not Parkinson's. It is a very rare form of vasculitis. About two to three in a million people get it. So it's very, very, very rare. But we have a lot of similarities that I have become aware of and shared with Andrea over the last, I've already lost track of time. So I guess 2.5 years since starting to get sick. And one is trying to get a diagnosis and the maddening part of that. And I spent a year going to doctor to doctor to doctor. And I had everything from, you have GERD, we just need to do stomach surgery. And I'd say, no, I don't have GERD. And going to a different doctor, oh, it's just your stress. That's why you have those hives. Oh, it's just your nervousness. That's why all of a sudden your blood pressure has gone up so high. Oh, it's just your asthma. You're just kind of overreacting.
Or
And
what about COVID?
oh my
Because it
God,
was March 2020. Was that,
it was horrible.
that come up?
Yeah, one of my doctors told me, the one who finally actually admitted me at Mayo and finally got me the diagnosis, said, you just picked a really bad time to get sick. And yeah, because if it wasn't COVID, nobody would pretty much deal with you. So everything was COVID. I think I've lost track. I've probably had about 30 COVID tests because everybody was like, it's COVID, it's COVID. And it was not COVID. I don't believe I actually ever had COVID. I have had so many tests.
Well,
But
you
it was,
mentioned
yeah.
2 in a million. I think you're 1 in a million, but 2 in a million, EGPA, a form of vasculitis. We spend a lot of time in the neurology world over here. So could you outline just, nothing medical, but
Yeah.
what is your disease?
Yeah, it's an inflammation. Vasculitis is an inflammation of your vascular system. There's like 20 different kinds, sort of like in movement disorders. There's all these different kinds of movement disorders. It's a bunch of different kinds of vasculitis. EGPA it's small and medium vessel vasculitis. So it really impacts any organ that has small blood vessels or medium blood vessels. So your heart, your lungs, your kidney, your skin, your
All the important stuff.
nervous system. Yeah, like it's why truly, if you don't treat it, it is deadly. And most people don't live 5 years without it, without treatment of this, because it will kill the whole point is it kills your organs. So yeah, the treatments it's one of those things where the treatments, you look at it and think the treatments are worse than the disease because they're pretty much all chemo treatments or transplant. They're really designed to just completely annihilate your immune system. But it's actually not true because the disease will kill you. So you do have to figure that out and navigate that.
Yeah. So a chronic illness, complex, full body. So a lot of parallels to Parkinson's. And you were mentioning all of the things that the various doctors tried to tell you that it was and the misdiagnoses. How did you navigate that? How were you able to say, no, it's not GERD. I don't need stomach surgery?
I mean, it's a really good question. And I think, part of it is I channeled you guys and I would say to Andrea a lot of times, I have spent the last few years saying, if your doctor's not listening, fire your doctor and go to a new one, and if you don't see a movement disorder specialist, see one, you're not cheating on your doctor. And so I hear you guys in my conversations in my head, as I've had to navigate this and fire doctors. I've fired quite a few. I think my biggest challenge, in all honesty, my biggest challenge is that the first treatment and the one that I'm still on. So, gosh, I don't know, 18 months later, I'm still on prednisone. So being on steroids does make you just a little bit hot-headed sometimes. Maybe I don't say things quite as nicely as I might. So that's probably been the hardest part of navigating it, is the frustration. And what do you do with a doctor who's not listening? I mean, and do you overtly fire them? Do you talk back to them? And you guys know this, when you're not feeling well, I really can't believe how hard it is to actually advocate for yourself. It's just not even if I make a list, I'll go in and it's just exhausting. So there's so many things I've learned, and I think of all the conversations we've had, and medications, you research medications, you go and you talk to your doctor and they're like, I don't know if you need that. And inside you're like, I know what's going on in me, but in the face of a doctor, it's really hard. And then I think too, I've shared with you, Andrea, there's been some really good research recently on women's health and the minimizing of symptoms when it comes to women in healthcare, as well as people of color. It's a real problem. So my goal is to start to feel well enough to be able to take on that fight. Because I think, I don't care what disease it is, that it has to be a partnership with the doctor. And that's easier said than done.
Mhm. So even after many, many conversations and being on the other side of things and encouraging people to advocate for themselves and fire their doctors. So you're saying it's maybe easier said than done when it comes down
Way
to you?
easier. Yeah, way easier said than done. And I remember, and I've had a lot of really bad reactions to different medications that have sent me to the hospital. But I remember the one time we went to the hospital, and I had a really bad reaction to one of my medications, and the hospitalist was refusing to call the rheumatologist. So of course, for you guys, that would be like knowing that somehow your Parkinson's needs to be addressed and the doctor doesn't want to call a neurologist. The doctor was just arguing, and I was really sick. I had 103 fever. I was just really, really sick. Poor oxygen. And my wife, he looked at my thing and it was about 86. And he's like, I'm all right with your oxygen as it is. And she was like, absolutely not. This is not okay. And I couldn't, and I was so grateful, it's like, we really do need someone with us in appointments. I don't go to any appointments alone anymore. Part of it is that I just can't track information like I used to, which is a whole nother topic of grieving. And part of it is, I really believe that as a patient, you're going to the doctor in some way because something doesn't feel good. Whether you feel sick, something is off. And I just feel that advocate, the other person who can say, no, I see this too. We shouldn't need that. We shouldn't need somebody to actually validate that for us with the doctor. But the way the medical system is today, we do. And especially with diseases like you guys have, like I have, where I can put on makeup and do my hair and you would see me and be like, you look good. And you're like, you have no idea how bad I feel inside. And no one really can. I think that's the other piece I've learned. I've thought about all these years, even when my father-in-law, with his Parkinson's, I don't care the level of empathy until you actually have something with your body that is so profoundly wrong and different than your whole life experience has been. There's really no way to understand that complexity and grief. See, I'll cry. I'm going to cry all through this too. So you guys, we can all cry.
Good. It's good to get it out.
Yeah.
So grieving and mourning and transition into a new normal, a new reality. I know that's something that can't have been easy for you. And for those that don't know, Sarah is the consummate, workaholic, founded this company, loves what she does, it's PMD Alliance is your child in many ways. So how did you tackle that transition?
I'm really grateful and fortunate to have worked with such amazing people. And you and Anissa and Rebecca and Maureen and Margie. I mean, that team that was kind of around me during the time when I was trying to navigate that was priceless. I mean, people here didn't know what was happening behind the scenes, but I would regularly have a really hard time following a conversation, especially, 10, 15 minutes in, my brain was tired and I was fatigued. And so these guys helped me through a lot of chats on Zoom to help me with that. And I would get off and I would crawl over to my couch, which we put in my office, and fall sound asleep for a few hours and get up and try again. And it took probably 6 months at least of really intensive work to come to acceptance that I just couldn't. I also now understand what fatigue is, and that it is nothing like sleepiness. I keep saying it's sort of like when I'm really fatigued, I feel like I have a train car attached to my back and I am trying to carry it uphill. And it feels like that. That's what just, eating can feel like that. And so it took probably 6 months. I remember in January, there was a conversation that the team had of, January of this year, there's a conversation of like, I'm afraid I'm going to need to do disability, but I really, really wanted to wait until after our ATMRD. And by March, I had failed another medication treatment, and it was just clear that it was like, I can't do this. The stress on my body is not going to give it any chance to. I also realized how stress impacts us. Everybody says that. I've heard that for my whole life, but whatever, you just push past it. At least that's how I used to be. Until you can't.
And stress impacts your physical health, your mental health, but also your relationships. Can you talk to us a little bit about, I know you've always been such a fierce supporter of care partners and so empathetic to the care partner experience. But when, after being diagnosed, how has your, perception of care partners evolved?
That's huge. I remember somewhere earlier this year, probably when I just finally had gotten to the place of I am going to need to do disability, and I'm going to need to not work. I remember realizing that Pam, my wife, Pam was doing all this stuff around the house because I couldn't, so I wasn't cooking. I couldn't do anything because if I was lucky if I could do work for a couple hours a day, never mind trying to add in the other. And how much I needed her. I don't really drive on the highway anymore. It's overwhelming. And so I remember saying to her, I don't want a care partner. And I just, it struck me. And it was an awareness again of when you recognize that you need that, then you're recognizing that you need that. And that's a tough one, but it's so important because otherwise you're not recognizing that person. And, it's really hard because I have care partners. Yeah. It's my thing. It's the backbone of this organization, watching my mother-in-law and watching her crumble. And so I'm also so aware of that. So, that's been helpful because I really don't argue. Like if something's important to her, like I really need you to not drive on the highways because you get overwhelmed or something like that. Like I don't argue and try to fight that because it is two people trying to navigate this. And then also really, we talk about the ecosystem, but boy, is that important because without having other people, the weight is too great on the loved ones. So I've really engaged my family in a way that I never could have imagined. My support group is like priceless. If you asked me 2 years ago, will you go to a support group? I'd be like, for what? No. I now crave that. And then I really believe that everybody, this is my soapbox, but I believe that everybody navigating any kind of disease that is so intensive and so systemic, I really believe in therapy, somewhere to go and just really cry and process the life changes. My crying with Ryan, my therapist's name is Ryan. So I call it crying with Ryan. And it's lovely. So it's a
So you
must have. I
mentioned
think that
your,
needs to come with diagnosis. Here's your diagnosis. Here's an antidepressant. Here's a therapist package.
and I know a question we get a lot is, well, how do I find a therapist who knows Parkinson's? How did you find your therapist, and was there any insight into, that you can share with folks about finding someone who is a good fit for you?
Yeah, that was an interesting process because I knew I didn't need someone who would be like, let's talk about your childhood. That, not that I'm opposed to that, but I knew that was not what I was needing. So what I did is, Psychology Today has a really good list of therapists. And you can search by different topics. So I searched by chronic illness, and then I got a lot of cancer, but cancer is a really different, not all cancers. Some cancers are really chronic, but a lot of cancers are really acute. And so they're really intense. You go in, you fight, it's a fighting spirit, that gonna get over it, gonna get in remission. And for Parkinson's and for my disease, remission isn't really, no, I'm not going to go in remission. We're just going to try to quiet the disease and not have it progress. So I actually started looking at things like HIV, because I think that's another chronic one that you can't see. So I wanted to look at like diseases that you can't see, but a person is experiencing that has changed their whole life. And so I looked at HIV, and then I also looked for people who were good with hospice, because I figured, I'm not that I'm dying, but I figured if you can handle the intensity of hospice, you can handle grief. Because what I didn't need and what I didn't want and what made me mad was when I was in that space, I didn't need people to be like, it's okay. It's okay. You look great. No, I would like to punch you. Sorry, you guys, the ones that know me know that I would say that kind of thing, but
Mhm. Okay. Well, I wouldn't have thought of those search parameters, but those are great. So Psychology Today is the master list, and then applying some of those filters to whittle it down. And you mentioned also your support group. So is it in person? How often do you go?
So both actually for the therapy and this, that's all online. And what I do like about that, my spoon thing, which we can talk about, I don't know if you want to talk about the spoon thing, but it uses energy to get ready, drive somewhere, have to drive home. That's slow energy. And when you're really have a finite amount of it, I have to be really careful where I use it. And so I have been really happy to do online. The support groups are only online because vasculitis is so rare that I don't think you could find probably 10 people in Tucson that are dealing with it. Maybe you could, but I don't know how you'd find it. So they're from all over. Those are always online, but they have 4 of them every week. And then once a month, there's one that's just for my kind of disease, my form of vasculitis. And I love that group. And kind of like you guys, we've always been champions of the support groups and support group leaders. I love that it's informal. I love that it's led by somebody who is navigating the disease. It just feels more casual and less stressful, and less like an appointment. And half of what it does is just makes me feel less alone. So, there are people on there all the time who are dealing with kidney transplants or, all sorts of stuff that's come up because of the disease. And we just all get it, and we can talk about how people don't understand it, and we can all just get it. I know you guys know what that's like. It's priceless. And finally, looking for care partner stuff. Oh my gosh, care partners continue to be true unsung heroes. And so I'm so glad that it's such a core part of PMD Alliance. It's essential, but I can tell you it is not easy to find care partner stuff. So the vasculitis group, they just started one once a month for care partners. Thank goodness. I've been
Well,
telling
that
them,
might
of course.
be, that's maybe a quick curiosity to explore. When you compare PMD Alliance's resources, or maybe even the Parkinson space, not just our organization, when you compare and contrast to the vasculitis world, are there some things that are better, worse, different in terms of resources and advocacy organizations?
Well, I think it was last week I said to you, Andrea, do you want to be the Parkinson and Movement Disorder and Vasculitis Alliance? Because no, it's I of course I'm partial to PMD Alliance, and Parkinson's in general has a lot more resources, and it makes sense. It's more people, and there's funding because there's new medications for it, which is fantastic. I mean, eat that up and use that, because that is a priceless resource. But there's, the Vasculitis Foundation, it's small. I think they have like 5 staff members. They do really good stuff, but they do a lot of research. So a lot of the stuff that they fund is research, which is great because nobody's going to fund research for such small diseases. Like, there's no money in it. No one's going to fund that. So that's great that they do that. But, the piece that I have missed, and that, of course, especially with my prednisone, I'm opinionated about and talk about regularly, is, kind of that connecting with people, which I think is what the PMD Alliance portion was. Like, you can know this stuff, but if you can't translate it into every day and figure out how to navigate it every day, it's sort of useless. And I feel like that here, like, I still don't really understand. I mean, I'm on 27 medications right now. And I saw somebody say the chemo in my curls. Yes, these curls are thanks to some medications, but I mean, I'm on 27 medications right now. I couldn't tell you what they do. I've tried so hard to research them. We don't have the talks like PMD Alliance has, where you actually get a doctor talking about a medication in depth and explaining it and why it works. I mean, those are huge resources that I don't think, it's hard to even know how valuable those are until you don't have those. Or someone that can help break down, we do this with care partners at PMD Alliance all the time. You can talk about stress, but if you can't break that down into something that you can do every day, it's not helpful. I feel like, it's something as basic as prednisone that we're all on. I don't think any of us really understand how all that works. We just know we take it, and we know we hate it, and we know we love it because it keeps us alive, and we hate it. I feel like that's the magic with PMD Alliance, and we don't have that with vasculitis. And I don't think a lot of disease states have that, frankly.
Yeah. And I want everyone to know that through so many of the steps of Sarah's journey, she mentioned the 27 medications. She has come back to the team and said, I'm on 27 medications. So I now know the best pill box for complex medication regimens. Here it is. Tell everyone about it. And every setback, every, additional stressor, it has infused PMD Alliance with information and empathy and richness. And as people said, as Carol, hi, Carol, in the chat said that you're such a generous person, Sarah, that, sharing your journey and being so open and transparent is helping a lot of people. And I just wanted to share, even behind the scenes, there is a ton of information coming at us. And, you know, everything that we've talked about so far, Sarah's been like, I know we say support groups are important. They're more important. They're 10 times more important than I thought they were before I was going to one regularly. So thank you for that. Oh yeah, we got to get the pill organizer out there for
Oh,
Ken.
they are finding the right one, the right size that's easy to use, and that doesn't flip when it opens, and then all 27 of your meds from multiple days go everywhere. And then you're looking with your pill boxes going, this little white pill with my glasses on, what's the code on this one? Oh, that's my prednisone. Okay. And like making sure that I put the right pills in the right box after I've tipped them all over. You guys know it, and also understanding, it's that fine line. I always thought, why wouldn't anybody want one of these new medications? And I still think they're important, but it's so complex because every medication is so loaded. Every medication means there's something that you're still trying to improve, which then brings up another level of grief and another level of acceptance about function, like it or not. At least it does for me. And it also, though, if it's something that it's harder for me to take medication that I don't understand and see the problem and therefore the direct benefit of, that's more frustrating. If I know this is a problem and this is going to help it, even if I have to take the medication, I will do it. I will swear the whole time, but I will do it. And I can tell you, though, in a disease state where there isn't medication, I mean, there literally is, I have failed on all of the medications that are potentially used for my disease. And so now we're using one that isn't indicated and it's just not strong enough. So I think we're going to end up going back to one of the ones that I failed. And I don't know, I'll probably end up having to be in the hospital when they try it to make sure that I don't have the complication. But in Parkinson's, we're so lucky to have new medications. And, I just think of like the on-demand therapies, the Imbresias and the Kinmobis and the Apokins, the ones that help in that on-demand space. Like, I don't know, one of my doctors said to me, I can't fix a lot of your stuff, but I can help this piece. And he was my dermatologist, and it stuck with me. I mean, that was 1.5 years ago that he probably said that to me. And it was something that was seemingly small, but it was irritating. And it struck me because it was like, oh, we're so used to, if it's not big, I don't need to bring it up. I don't need to bother the doctor with it. And it's like, no, if it's impacting our lives, that's their job. And our job is just to bother them about it. And I also think, Andrea, you talked about being seen with this. It's been hard. I've told you many times. For those of you that have seen Men in Black, that first Men in Black, if you remember Edgar, he was like the giant bug that was in the beginning scene of Men in Black. Many times I feel like Edgar. Because I know how I feel inside. So I feel that way around people. I don't know that they feel that, but I feel that way, that self-consciousness. But I feel like the only way to help people understand is to show up and let yourself be seen. And, you guys do that. And it is not easy. And that goes for care partners too. That to be seen in the challenge of it.
Well, Cheryl has a question about grief and acceptance with new meds. And I know one of your pet peeves is the term medication compliance or medication adherence. And yeah, this is an area of study that the doctors out there just can't wrap their heads around. Well, I prescribe things, and why don't my patients just take the pill every 90 minutes, but not with food, and not if you're going outside, and this, that, and the other. So to go from someone, or I don't know, to go from 0 medications a day to 27 and be and adhere to that regimen, how have you made that mind shift?
Um, yeah, it isn't easy. I'm not keeping track of the notes, but I just glanced at that one and saw that one. It isn't easy. I think I have tried to let myself have the space to grieve every time I've added one. Because even if it's something that's going to help me, I have to come to terms with I need it. And the compliance piece, yeah, that's my pet peeve. I recently had a doctor who wrote that in my chart, non-compliant, which of course I went irate on, not to him, but I am considering firing him. But I believe if you're not taking a medication as prescribed or using a therapy as prescribed, so this whole topic was around the CPAP, because with this lovely disease, now I have some respiratory disturbance all night long. So they want me to use a CPAP, and I find it very difficult. And so I'm still in the process of coming to terms with that, to tell you the truth. And if you're not using something as opposed to non-compliant, that's an indication. If you're not using it, it's either that it's not helping, it is too disruptive. And I'm making, this is for me anyway, it's too disruptive in my life that I can't, it takes more energy to use it or do it than it does to give back to me. There's a reason that we don't use things. And I think that's the conversation with the doctor. Now, I wish doctors would just say, tell me why you're not using it, as opposed to either giving up and then not prescribing it or calling you non-compliant. There's a reason. And I think that goes back to finding the right partner in a doctor. Our diseases, they're marathons. You guys know that. I just said this yesterday on my support group. If they told me that I needed to have this level of prednisone and this level of how I feel for the next 20 years, I would not, no. I just no. But can I do it for the next few months while we figure out what I need to do? I can. And so finding that doctor, though, that will be the partner, I just think that's the key. And I think that's not easy. Now, I'll have to report back to you, because I'm about to have that conversation with my new rheumatologist, the only expert in the state left. So I'm going to be having a conversation with my new rheumatologist about partnering. And we'll find out if that goes well.
Okay. We'll want to
But
hear
I use
back.
the portal for a lot of those too, by the way, because in the moment I can't get my words out always. And so the portal really helps me, because I can write it and go back to it and go back to it 15 times. So I know it's exactly what I want to say, and share it with Pam and somebody else to read it. And so I get to say what I want to say. It doesn't always have to be at that moment in the appointment.
It's a good tip. And I know another resource that you said has been really helpful is a book called How to Be Sick. Oh, there it is by your table. And we can put the link to that.
You won't,
in the
yeah, you want
chat,
this
but
book.
it's a Buddhist-inspired approach. And I don't know, could you maybe then instead of we'll put the link in the chat so you can see the description, but I think the metaphor that I think's been really powerful for you, and it does kind of talk about, acceptance of chronic illness, is the wind metaphor. Can you teach us about that?
Yeah, this book is really helpful, I think, for not just the person with a disease, but the care partners too. We've been reading it together. I'm not Buddhist, but I like the principles of not over attaching to things, that kind of thing. And the wind metaphor, when I remember it, it helps me stay sane. It basically, the metaphor is just, you can't predict the wind and you can't control the wind. So the metaphor comes from, she tells the story of the movie, The Weatherman, which, by the way, I did watch, and yeah, no, that you don't need to watch the movie to get the metaphor. Unless you like it. If you like it, I'm sorry for offending you. But it in the Weatherman, the meteorologist says, we may get this storm, we may not. It might pass by us. There's an 18% chance that won't happen. And the weatherman guy says, that's not acceptable. People, our listeners and the people who watch our show they want to know. They don't want what you think is going to happen, maybe. And he says, it's the weather, man. It's the wind, man. It blows all over the place. And I read that and I was like, isn't that the truth? You can have your best laid plans and wake up and go, it's just not a good day. And it's the wind, so also not holding on to the bad times, because they will change too. And they'll blow by. And just like the wind, I'm a person that I like to think I've always thought I had control over things. I will make things happen. If there's one thing I'm learning with disease, nope. I'm actually not in control. So I find it helpful if I can remember that, because then I can let it go and trust that something better will come in, even on the days where I'm disappointed in how I feel.
That's powerful. The wind, let it blow, come and go. The other, you sent me a passage to read on having to do with maybe changing perspectives. You said, your perspective has changed, that you can't actually boss around life and control what happens by being, yes, and have to roll with the punches more. So I have this passage. Without the bitter cold of giving up my profession, I wouldn't have the fragrance of Mozart and Beethoven wafting through my bedroom. Without the bitter cold of having to stay in bed most of the day, I wouldn't be so attuned to the changing seasons. I never realized they are on view right outside my bedroom window. And thank you for highlighting that and sending it. I think this is tough territory, because who wants to get a diagnosis? Who is looking, for the bright side of things? So, what does that kind of passage and the silver linings aspect, how does that translate to your specific journey?
I mean, in all honesty, there are days I have a really hard time finding silver linings. And for those of you that know me, I'm a pretty optimistic person. So that's been a process, recognizing that. At the same time, it has forced me to slow down, and I have deeper relationships than I know I ever could have had with the speed at which my life was moving. At home, I am far more present in that relationship than I have been in 27 years. Sometimes too present for those of you that know when you're just home all the time. But I think it's helped me with that presence. I think it has helped me, it is helping me learn to come to terms with helplessness, which sounds negative, but actually I think in life, that's a really important thing to come to terms with, because life doesn't go as we plan for any of us. And that's only a recipe for sadness or regret. And I think too, it's really helping me enjoy like the moment. I don't know how long, I don't know what this disease is going to be. I mean, the prognosis, they don't really have a great prognosis because it hasn't been researched, as I mentioned. So if you read the prognosis, it's not great, but I don't care because I'm just kind of like right here. And like, I have a different understanding of quality of life than I ever did. Mm-hmm.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to save the chat file and send it to you because people are writing beautiful things about how much you mean to them. And like I said when we opened, if anyone wants to, if you raise your hand, we can unmute you and you can say hi or ask a question. I know Cheryl had some questions about, dealing with the emotions of having a chronic illness and the ebb and flow of grief and acceptance. And maybe Cheryl, check out the book, How to Be Sick. Unless Sarah, you have the answer, in your pocket, and
I wish I did.
I just didn't ask you well enough.
I could just like be there, but no, the book has been helpful, and I think it's just time too. I said to my support group yesterday, if 6 months ago you told me that I had to like navigate what I'm navigating right now, I would have just been like, what? And now I'm like, okay, we've got time. This doesn't have to be fixed immediately. And I think time helps that. And therapy. The right person to actually, grief it's got to come out.
I see our friend Carol there raising her hand. Okay, I think if I click ask to unmute, you should be able to unmute, Carol. Maybe not.
There you go.
Oh, there you go.
Thank you, Andrea. Sarah, I just want to say, for those of you, I'm the CEO of the Parkinson Alliance, and we just did a collaboration with PMD Alliance for our database for online surveys so the patient has a voice. And I wanted this collaboration for one really specific reason. We've done 35 surveys all about motor and non-motor symptoms of Parkinson's. And I think PMD Alliance, and I've watched a lot of their webinars, they have taken this motor and non-motor to an entire different level. And the topics they come up with that people don't ever want to talk about, they deal with. And I'm sitting here, I have 5 pages of notes because I've learned so much from you today, Sarah. And I think what you have done is you're still the CEO in some way, because what you've done today is you've taken your disease and you've shared so many lessons that a lot of people are going to learn a lot of things from today, which is just so you and PMD Alliance. And I just wanted to thank you.
Thanks, Carol. Yeah, that's what I love about the team, and Andrea and I spend hours talking about this stuff sometimes. And sometimes we're in conversations with doctors talking about this stuff. And it's just, and you're right, it's just, that's the nature of PMD Alliance. It's, I know it's why my we never planned on this being a founders organization. We always knew that we wanted to have it be long-term and not, and be living through many different leaders. And so, and Andrea and I started working on this a few years ago. I was gonna say a couple, but now time's all confused. But well before COVID, kind of that succession, didn't know when that was going to happen, didn't know it would happen immediately this year. But and that was one of the beautiful parts that I saw in Andrea, was you can't teach people that passion, and you can't teach people to be willing to go to those topics that no one wants to talk about in a kind, honest, but gentle way. And it's something that she has in her, and it's something that everyone on the team has in them. It's actually something that the team screens for in hiring people. And I'm a believer in that. I just don't think we can keep, we can't blow sunshine at stuff that just sometimes isn't sunny.
Well, you have succeeded greatly, and every day there's something new, and every day you all deal with something different, and you're doing this today, at least in my mind, it's just taken it to a whole new level.
Thanks, Carol.
And we have some members of our flying solo support group there, Tamara and Lee, who called out, there's many people out there living alone, so they're doing both roles. And it's it is our extreme joy to work with, and it's with the members of that flying solo group. They are the ones leading the content, and we add what we can, but they're walking the journey of what it's like to live with Parkinson's alone. And so hi, Lee, and hi, Tamara. I probably said your name wrong. Sorry about that.
I'm glad
and then
you
there
brought
was
that up, Andrea. I'm really glad you brought that up, because that is a piece that isn't talked about enough. One of my closest friends in my support group with vasculitis lives alone. And I wish that there was a flying solo for vasculitis, because it's a lot if you are navigating a disease process. But boy, do friends, you got to have friends though, that can do it with you. That's another screening process and another change too, because some friends just can't go there. You guys know that.
And let's see, I did miss a question from Naomi towards the beginning. Naomi said, what do you need from others to help support you?
Yeah, I think that the thing that has been most supportive for me is people who will speak their truth. I just find, and again, like where they're really at, not feeling like anybody needs to fix it. I can't. Nobody can fix your Parkinson's. Nobody can fix, your relationship that was going along. And then all of a sudden you've got this disease and everything has just changed in how your relationship is. Nobody can fix those things. But to be real and present, honestly, I think is the greatest gift. I think it's a hard gift, because I think it's much easier to try to give advice. And I think for me, I generally don't need advice. I just need to feel like I'm okay with the messiness that it is.
Absolutely. Well, taking notes, you got it. And I think you've built a culture at PMD Alliance where that is just infused in everything we do. It's not prescriptive or paternalistic or maternalistic about, oh, well, you would be fine if you just did this, this, this. We want to listen. We want to hear what it's actually like, what you need. And like you said, sometimes what you need is just honesty and an open ear. So You got it. You got it. Well, if you haven't already, I want to give you a sneak peek of a letter that's going to be coming into your mailbox. So at PMD Alliance, we don't do as much fundraising as some organizations do, but really the cornerstone of our fundraising is our year-end annual appeal. And I got my mail recently, and there was a big picture of Sarah and I, a selfie on the envelope. And our team is really proud of this campaign. It was built off of an interview that Sarah and I did, and it will be coming to your mailboxes if it hasn't already. Our organization, we're so proud that our services, our programs are free, but as the tagline goes, that doesn't mean that they're not without cost. We are an organization of the community, of all of you, and we can't keep doing what we do without your support. So for those of you out there, I see many names who are already donors of ours. Thank you, thank you. And for those who would like to become donors, we have the snail mail campaign that'll be hitting your mailbox soon. The top of our website, we always make sure there's a donate button, and we want to make it easy. We have many ways for you to support us. You can donate your car if you have IRA required distributions that you need to take care of. If it's $5, whatever it is, we appreciate every bit of support. And also want to call out those folks who support us with their time as volunteers and ambassadors. So we are grateful for you. We couldn't do what we do without all of you. And we thank you for all of your support and everything that you do. So thank you. I don't know anything if you want to add.
My emphasis on that too. I'm so grateful for that. Thank you for all our, current donors. They are the lifeblood. And thank you. Yeah, you'll see the picture. You'll see our faces. It came in the mail. I was like, oh, I couldn't even recognize where the picture was from. But also just to know that when you're supporting, it's not just going to our programs, as we talked about today. Our work with doctors, our work with, providers also is part of our mission, because it does take the whole network, and they have their own set of stressors that then come out sideways in how they interact in media. Sometimes what their busyness, what we take as you don't have time for me in an appointment, is the pressures they're getting from the systems that they work in too. So it's complex. And so we really are working it from all angles. And I love that.
The entire ecosystem is our scope, which means there's a lot to do, but how else can you tackle something unless you're taking a truly holistic approach? We're not just piecemealing. We want to affect the entire system. So we thank everyone who already is a donor, of your treasure, of your funds, of your time. And thank you all who show up. And like Sarah said, what do I need? Yeah, people are just going to show up, be open, be vulnerable, be honest. And our community does that day in and day out. So thank you. Thank you.
I loved being with you. Thank you guys for letting me share time with you. I really have missed you so much. And love you all.
You know how we always close out, right? So I invite everyone to turn on their camera if it's been off. And Sarah, scroll through all of these faces.
Okay, I'll wave with my love. Oh, yes. Yay! How fun is that?
Oh, we have to do a screenshot. Oh, get someone from some techie type person who can do a screenshot. So thank you everyone for spending time with us today. And thank you, Sarah, it's hard to be vulnerable and you made it look easy. So
yeah, well, talking with you makes it easy. So thank you. Back at you.
Bye,
Thanks, you guys.
everyone.
Bye.